Hello, David Brody here. I'm from USA, but I've been here in Chile for almost a year now. My wife is from Chile, and I've been to 45 nations or so. And if you are going to be in ministry or in YWAM, you probably will go to some other nations or experience people from nations. So it's good to know about different cultures, especially the difference between hot and cold countries. So we're getting into intercultural aspects, and this is mainly what we're looking at is the difference between cold countries, in other words, the Europeanized countries, and warm countries, the non-Europeanized countries. So you can look at the map, and basically the cold countries, you're looking at the Americas and Europe and Russia and all these. And then in the south, you're even looking at Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, some in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, those from the Europeanized type background. And there are some general differences between these two, and this may help you in some situations. One is time versus event. The Europeanized or cold countries tend to be more time oriented. If we say, let's meet at 8 o'clock, we generally mean 8 o'clock. If we say 8:15, we mean 8:15. So it's more of an exact time orientedness. We Westerners tend to have timed schedules, either written out or at least in our heads.
I run my home precisely on schedule. At 6:01, I march through my door. My slippers, sherry and pipe are due. At 6:02, consistent is the life I lead. It's 6:03 and the heirs to my dominion are scrubbed and tubbed and adequately fed. And so I'll pat them on the head and send them off to bed. Ah, lordly is the life I lead.
An example of a time-oriented nation would be Switzerland. And they're a country that's been known for making clocks and watches and such. And in Switzerland, if a train is scheduled to arrive at 5:06, it will arrive at 5:06. It's very exacting on time. However, other cultures are not focused on time. They're focused on the event. One example would be the nation of India. They're very event oriented. It's not so much when it's going to happen, it's the event itself.
बढ़ा लो नैनों के पेच लड़ा लो आ जाओ ना छत पर हम लुट गए बेबी आके तेरे मोहल्ले हम लुट गए जालिमा के तेरे मोहल्ले खिड़की से मुझे ताके सारे गली के बाके क्यों लंबी लंबी हाके कोई ना तुझे ताके किसको लल्लू बना के कहती रहती है फिर हम लुट गए भी आके तेरे मोहल्ले हम लुट गए भी आके तेरे मोहल्ले.
My experiences in India was that things were less time oriented. If you were invited to a wedding and the wedding invitation said 6 o'clock, you would not even think of coming at 6 o'clock. If you came at 6 o'clock, no one would be there. You come at about 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and that's when things get going. Of course, often these ceremonies and speeches were very long, so we might come at 8:30 or 9 o'clock to hit things just right. So it's more the event. I've heard that parts of Africa are even less time-oriented. If they say, let's meet at 2 o'clock today, it might mean tomorrow or the next day. You just have no idea. On the other hand, with urbanization and westernization of different countries, you could be in places like India or Africa and actually see a time-orientedness, especially in the cities. So don't be surprised if you see that as well. We found in India in the cities that people were more time-oriented, but the traffic was so terrible that often things started a bit late anyway. Then we have the aspect of goals versus people, whereas the cold countries, the Europeanized countries, are more goal-oriented, and the hot countries are more people-oriented. So sometimes we people from cold countries make the mistake of going into a hot country, and we're all goal-oriented and we want to get things done. And the people in the hot country want to be friends. That's more important to them than just jumping into business. One example was at the end of the British Raj. The last British Viceroy of India was Lord Mountbatten. And then he was meeting with Mahatma Gandhi to discuss the transition of India to independence. Now, Mahatma Gandhi knew how Westerners were. He had encountered quite a few. So when he first met Mountbatten, he said, well, I guess you just want to get down to business. But Mountbatten knew how Indians were and how hot countries relate. And so he said, no, let's just spend our time at first getting to know each other. So they spent time getting to know each other. And as a result, they worked together very well as they worked out India's coming independence and ended up as very good friends. So if you're coming from a cold country into a hot country, make being friends, being friendly, relating as your goal. The Europeans and the North Americans are worst at this because we're very, let's get down to business. The South Americans are better because they're more people-oriented. And if you're from a hot country, just realize this is how Westerners can be. So just be ready for them often just kind of getting straight to business, though Westerners sometimes want to get the business done and then they like to relax and be friends. They just reverse it. Then we have the aspect of dating versus no dating. In the West, there's much more dating, going out with different people, sometimes the same person for a long time before there is talk of marriage. Whereas in the hot countries, there tends to be not so much dating, but going straight towards marriage. So in the West, when guys and girls are connecting and going out places together, it's not as much of a big deal. But in places, say like India, if a guy and a girl are alone together, spending time together, this is really serious. This could be heading towards marriage. And sometimes what happens is we have an American girl, say, come to India, and she spends some time with an Indian guy, and they might go to the store or something, and the girl's just thinking, well, we're just going to the store, no big deal. And the Indian guy is thinking, this girl is going to the store with me. This is, oh, I think she likes me. And you get all sorts of confused situations. Traditionally in India, there would be no dating. There just would be a groom seeing different prospective brides, and then between the families, the deal is made, and the bride is selected, and they get married. And I know one couple, they did not even spend time with each other at all until their wedding day. But things are changing in this intercultural aspect as are in other ones. There is more dating going on in hot countries like India, so things can get a bit confusing whether a person is from a conservative background or whether from a more westernized background of a hot country. Confrontation. In the cold countries, the Europeanized countries were more direct. We find something wrong, we go to the person. In other nations like Asia, very indirect. If a person is mad at you, they won't go to you, they'll go to someone else who tells you. It's very indirect. And so the hot countries can view the Europeanized countries as being very rude and brash, whereas the European countries can look at these non-European countries like the Asian countries as gossiping and whispering and beating around the bush. So if you are from a hot country, realize that you can be more direct with Westerners, and they may be more direct with you. On the other hand, if you're a Westerner and you're dealing with some of these hot countries, you may want to be a little more indirect. But again, in these modern times, I know some Indians who can be very direct and I can be direct with them and vice versa. So you just have to suss out the situation. Then there's the aspect of individual property versus communal property. Americans especially are very individual with our items. This is my this is my that, and we kind of section them out and see it that way. Whereas hot countries are much more communal and sharing with their property. So I would be on a train in India, for example, and I would have my music player with me, and I might put it on the counter, and the person opposite of me, who I don't even know, might pick it up and listen to it. They see everything as communal. Then we have great respect for leaders versus leaders are equal to everyone else. So in the West, the leader is like this, a little bit above everyone else. In the East, or in the hot countries, the leader is more like this, and you do not question them. You respect them, and that can be good and that can be bad, depending on the situation. I have found in Asia, for example, there is a great amount of respect for the pastor, for the village leader, for the teacher, etc. Whereas in America, it's less so. Personal space. How much space do you allow between yourself and others? Well, the kings of personal space among the cold countries would be the USA. There's so much space in the USA. If you go to a swimming pool in the USA, you may have an experience looking like this. This is actually, this might have been a pool I visited when I was younger in Edina in my hometown. But if you're in a place, say, like China, and you decide to go swimming, you may have an experience like this. There's just so many people. You're more crowded. Everyone's living in the cities, so you're really crowded. And so people in certain countries tend to stand much closer to each other than, say, in the West. I even found when I returned from India to America that I'd be standing a little too close to people for their taste, because I was so used to being, squished right next to people. I became a little bit like that myself. Respect for elders versus admiration of youth. So like I said, in the hot countries, they have a great amount of respect for the village elder, for the leaders, but also for people who are just older. The country which would really exemplify this would be South Korea and probably North Korea. They have a great respect for age. And the older you are, you get more respect. That's true in India as well. However, in the West, the youth are king. The youth are the future. They are the ones who know where things are going, and the older people are seen as kind of irrelevant and passé. Even in YWAM, we can see this. In the West, I might be viewed as this older, irrelevant person. Oh, you're in your 50s. I mean, what do you know? We're youth with a mission. We need some young teachers who really know where youth are going. Whereas, say, in India, they would view me as having more experience, and they would say, oh, you know so much and you're older and experienced. We're glad to have you teach. So this aspect works for me in the hot countries and against me in the cold countries as I get older, and it will for you also. Then we have the aspect of mild food versus spicy food. And this is simply because in the hot countries, because it was hot, before refrigeration, the only way to preserve things and prevent sicknesses and such was spice. And so the foods tend to be spicier in these hot countries. I, however, came from British ancestry. I'm used to mild food, so it took me a little while to adjust to the hot food of India, which I've come to like. But if you go into a restaurant in India, there are certain items which have a little image of a chili pepper next to them, meaning they're spicy. And some items may have 2 chili peppers next to them, meaning they're really spicy. I never order anything with a chili pepper next to it. It's too much. The regular food is very spicy and spicy enough for me. Thank you. On the reverse, I've heard of Indians who have come to places like Britain or America and think that the food is tasteless. There's no flavor. There's no spice. And then you'll run into the aspect of either being in a place that eats a lot of rice or a lot of bread. I remember I had a group in the Philippines, and a Filipino friend who was with us said, bread, bread, bread. All you people eat is bread. Well, it is more biblical. Jesus did say, give us this day our daily bread, not give us this day our daily rice. But in any case, if you go to another nation, you may have a bit of a change there. There also can be the aspect of eating with the hands versus eating with utensils. Then there is the aspect of formal versus informal. The Europeans and those influenced by them tend to be more formal, and the Americans, both North and South, tend to be more informal. And individual versus group. Some cultures, people think in an individual way, and other cultures, it's more of a group orientation. When you look at the individual types, the Americans certainly win. We are very individualistic, thinking of our own way of doing things.
The Lone Ranger. A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo silver. The Lone Ranger.
Whereas, say, a place like India would be more group-oriented, and many other hot countries. Even in Russia, we had a group of us North Americans that went to Russia, and I once asked one of my Russian friends, what strikes you as different about our group, us group of Americans? He said, well, on your day off, you all go off in separate directions. And see, I heard about the reverse, where Asians came to America, were at, I think, the U of N, and on the weekend would come, and these Asians would wait around to see what the group was doing. And the group wasn't doing anything. Everyone was doing their own thing. So it's a different way. Even in regards to accepting the gospel, Americans or Europeans would do it in a very individual way, but there's been stories in hot countries of entire villages making a decision for Christ as a group, and it being quite real. Then in many of the cold countries, men and women can be affectionate and touch in public. This is not seen as terrible. Whereas in more conservative, hot countries like Asia, there is generally no affectionate contact between men and women in public. That's seen as scandalous. I mean, one time we were staying at a house in Bangalore, India, and in the street behind us, there was a guy and a girl couple who were kind of secretly getting a little bit intimate there, just sitting on the curb by the street, but they were kissing and so on. And someone in a house nearby saw this and called the police. And the police came and beat the guy. So that would not happen in the West. But in some places like India, there can on occasion be hand-holding between guy friends, but don't do this in America. It might be interpreted in a different way. Clothing. Generally, the rule of thumb is the colder the country is, the less clothing you have to wear. For example, in Norway, the females can go around like this. But in Saudi Arabia, they have to go around like this. So we have had groups from America come to India who have needed to be told to wear long pants, wear more loose clothing, and that sort of thing. Noise, there's just different interpretations of noise, but in general, there's a less toleration in the cold countries of unneeded noise, like honking of horns. In India, they basically say, please honk your horn if you're passing, honk your horn. In fact, I've been in many Indian vehicles going down a street that had no other vehicles, and the driver will still be honking his horn. Whereas if you're in a country like Holland, if there is a car blocking you, usually you'll wait about 5 or 10 minutes before, beep, just slightly honking the horn, because they're so polite and don't want to fill the air with this terrible noise. And of course, some cultures enjoy the church bell, and that's a nice noise to them. And other cultures enjoy the human voice, the Muslim prayer, and that's nice to them. So it's different perspectives on what is good or bad noise. So different cultures can certainly see things in different ways. So I hope you found those cultural differences interesting and useful. The difference between Europeanized cold nations and non-European hot nations.